Welcome to the Hotel News Now Podcast Network. In this episode of the Next Gen and Lodging Podcast, host Omari Head talks with Dr. Erinn Tucker Oluwole, considered one of the 25 most influential global hospitality educators in the world. They share their insights, experiences, and visions for the future of diversity and inclusion in lodging. Subscribe to this podcast and more from H&N on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find podcasts. Thanks for listening.
Greetings, this is Omari Head, co-founder of Next Gen in Lodging. I'm proud to have this platform with Davon Reeves and Christopher Henry. And for this month's installment, we have the honor and the pleasure to meet with a longtime friend, even longer inspiration, and somebody who is very well known within the hospitality industry in multiple facets. So Dr. Erinn Tucker Oluwole, I've had the pleasure to meet her some time ago when she was at Boston University, and have been watching her career from afar and up close, just learning a lot. One thing that I thought would be a good contribution here for Next Gen and Lodging platform is that we're always about fresh ideas through fresh lenses, and from fresh talent as well. And I can't think of anybody that would be more appropriate, specifically as we look at where we are in history, specifically as we looked at where we are in the calendar. And with a history too strong to be called Negro History Week, it is Black History Month. So I am going to turn it over to Dr. Erinn to further introduce herself, and then I'll start bugging her with some questions. Dr. Erinn.
Thank you so much, Omari, and thank you for this phenomenal platform of Next Gen. I guess to pretty much sum up, I guess where I am along my journey, because I consider it a journey. Destinations just mean that that means you're just starting something else, not that anything really ends. So, as you mentioned, I guess originally I'm from Chicago, Illinois, just like you. And when I went to Florida A&M University, I wanted to definitely go to an HBCU for my undergrad. I loved my time there. I was a business major. I decided I wanted to follow my passion at the end of my senior year, which was not to take a traditional corporate job. I wanted to follow my passion in the sport marketing, whatever that meant. But that ended up translating to basically going back home, working game days at the Bears and interning for a sports agent. And to the chagrin of my parents, being an intern after a college degree. And so, that's not what you do, right? And so I decided that I was going to go and get my master's degree. And so I got my master's in sport management from Florida State. And then I did 2 internships, and that really kind of expanded my perspective of really what kind of sports and hospitality is. I did one with the RDV Sports, which is the NBA franchise that most people know it as Orlando Magic. And then I also did one with the PGA Tour. And it was really the PGA Tour that really opened up my my perspective of how just absolutely large the industry is. And so while all of that makes a difference is that in doing that, I ended up going and getting that first job, that real one that has like benefits and all that other stuff, for this really big sports company called General Motors, right? So remember I said I didn't want to take that traditional corporate job. I wanted to go follow my dream. Well, one of the best things I could have done was to go work for, actually was an agency. It was called General Motors R Works. And so I negotiated sponsorship agreements between Cadillac and Buick and the PGA Tour, amongst other sports assets that they had. And then ended up doing that and moved after that. And I couldn't do the same thing. I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, but within my network, I was recruited to go to be a sales manager for a company called Jillian's Entertainment, which you might not know Jillian's, but you might know Dave & Buster's. And so I kind of went from sort of the corporate side to the social side, and did events there, and ended up working on, my MBA part-time. Well, actually it was through an executive MBA program, wasn't really part-time. And then I booked this group called Johnson & Wales University. They were opening up a campus, and just through conversation, they said, "You make a great guest speaker." Went in and guest spoke and said, "This is what I want to do." So it was definitely for me, I think academia was more of a calling for me, more than it was something I was pursuing. And I started as an adjunct and decided to come over full. There's some kind of details that go into that, but that's kind of it for the most part. And I worked there for 4 years and decided to do my PhD in hospitality, and went to Oklahoma State and did that, and had a great opportunity to go live in Singapore for 2 summers, teaching at UNLV's campus. They had one. And then I came back and finished my dissertation. And then I spent 4 years at Boston University where we met. And then, of course, from that point on, 2 years at Temple, 6 years at Georgetown. And when it was time, really, this phenomenal opportunity at University of Maryland Eastern Shore, because one, it's such a legendary program from Dr. Ernie Boger, and then also they are the only program that has HBCU that actually has a PGA of America golf program. So that falls under hospitality. So for me, kind of going back full circle, right? To be able to oversee, 2 programs and as a chair, it was just a great opportunity, which kind of lends me to where I am right now from the academic side.
Dope. So as listeners can tell, you can tell why that I said this is somebody whose career that I followed from afar, from up close. Just, always good to see people from the hometown winning. Always good to see people from hospitality operations that transcend into higher ed, that have that experience and that can really give real, live, detailed experience to students, and more importantly, that aren't scared of industry and that still remain in touch with industry. So in your current role, talk about how important it is for you to be a leader of other educators that are servicing students primarily and specifically at a HBCU to maintain that contact with the industry. And what does that look like for you in your current role to maintain that contact and relationship with the industry?
Absolutely. I think first of all, really in leadership for me is really examining, why did I want to do this? Like what was my whole intention? And I think the number of years of working with faculty, I really, really like developing faculty. And that's not always an area that you hear about, because really in the chair's role, it's not so much about my discipline. It's about how well, you work with people, how well you can inspire others to really, follow the vision that's set. And, you have to do that with buy-in from your faculty, and you have to do that with the relationships with the staff. And that's just crucial. It's just crucial, I think, in leadership. I think that then how does that translate into industry is the fact that with that vision, I was very clear in coming into this time, really knowing that technology is just fundamentally in our space right now, and it needs to be covered much more within our courses. I think that I think the area of and listening to industry and what they need sort of around that was really important. I think that our students, and especially even at a historically Black college, should be able to lead and be comfortable with diversity, equity, and inclusion as a subject matter, because we are naturally a diverse campus. HBCUs, which is the thing that I'm always quite surprised about, when people kind of never go to HBCUs to ask, how do you handle, how are you working with DEI? Well, we've always had to have we always had diverse faculty as HBCUs. Student bodies have changed. But I think that that's always been a factor. And so I think that it's important that we step up and really be able to articulate that. And our students should be able to do that too. So implementing some faculty-led international study abroad programs that's something that we've gotten off the ground since I've been here, less than a year. So taking students to Zambia, creating relationships with schools in London and in Italy, because we need more of our students, and specifically our students of color, to have that global experience. So if they can be exposed to that in technology, that for this program can definitely, and regardless of whether they're hospitality and or golf, those 2 avenues are crucial for our students.
So right now, and one thing, part of the reason of how Next Gen got founded was, I think I'll speak on behalf of the co-founders, that they can beat me up later, but we kind of got tired of all the buzzwords surrounding DEI&A, and everybody cared about it for about a cool 15 minutes. And as you said, there was it's always been prevalent at historically Black colleges and universities. And I imagine that other minority serving institutions as well. but that the diversity factor has been there. It's been at the forefront because a core factor has a lot to do with equity and inclusion. So when you're talking with students, what are you hearing from top two things that you think you're hearing from students in terms of what they're looking for from an employer, and or if you want to frame it more so as disconnects, you know, in terms of what the industry is expecting, and you've had a chance to work at institutions, you know, graduate level, undergraduate level. So if you could speak a little bit to that and get, you know, just what you're seeing and kind of those top two things where maybe students are saying, or even recruiters might be sharing, where you think that there's some dislocation in expectations.
Sure. I think that, and this is, I think, something that's been exceptionally consistent when it comes to, I think, with employers and kind of the disconnect, is that, you know, employers still want like 40 years of experience out of a 20-year-old student. They want to come in and they sort of think that students will, you know, have all the answers and the end all be all, and it's not necessarily the case. There's perspectives. But I think that the expectation of that kind of needs to be, I think, embraced a little bit more. I found that I found a tad bit of a disconnect, I would say, from my perspective, kind of working in both a PWI, predominantly white institutions, and then at an HBCU, is that if you get a student of color that comes out of a PWI, one or two an academic year, you're doing phenomenal, right? At PWI, oh, these are, you know, some of the best students. And one or two that come out, you know, of an HBCU, then it's like, oh my gosh, what's the HBCU doing so wrong? So I think that there is definitely a perception that needs to be addressed by industry as it relates to how they're even viewing and approaching HBCUs. I think part of that is understanding that all HBCUs are not the same. Our histories are not the same. Our visions, goals are not the same. It's just that it's a designation based off of what was put into place by President Kennedy. So to protect our institutions, they were like, you know, our institutions, you know, started in the late 1800s. We were not HBCUs until the 1960s. And there's a history and a reason behind that. And so therefore, every school is going to look a little bit different. So I think that's an understanding. I think that has to be addressed. On the student side, I'm hearing a lot of ownership. Students want to own. Students want corporate experiences. The reason I think, and it's fair, because I think that it's many of them work front desk. You know, so this is one of the industries where students are already working in the industry. So they're looking towards employers to, especially, you know, in their internship and opportunities, to kind of get them into more of understanding, you know, kind of the corporate side, not just the operation side. And as I said, you know, if it's not ownership, at least having an ownership mindset.
That's crucial, and your feedback. I don't know if you, and just so you all know, I didn't give her these questions in advance. That the feedback that you noted in terms of the perception of HBCU, I mean, that's a whole commercial. It's quite the articulation and observation of what's happened as somebody who's had the privilege to teach at HBCUs as well as PWIs as well, and watch our students go out there and grow and go and become movers and shakers, and meet the alums that are the movers and shakers as well, and also have the conversations with my friends who are in the recruiter seat, and what does it look like. And this is an opportunity for it to potentially be that solution for your equity and inclusion, should you decide to invest in it the right way. And that may not always be capital resources.
Right.
A lot of it has to do with investing time and energy and developing and growing your comprehension of what that HBCU strategy and approach looks like, and that it's not a monolith. So again, kudos to you for articulating that. You touched on something that's very near and dear to my heart as well as yours, which is the ownership component and the aspirations to own. And you've been in the classroom for a while now. How have you seen that shift in terms of students desiring to have more entrepreneurial information, education, and exposure. And what have you done in previous roles, and what are you doing now currently to help students get that?
Yeah. So I remember when I started teaching at Johnson and Wales specifically, and kind of coming in with students who are, I mean, you're talking about students who are exceptionally targeted for the industry. And some of them were culinary as well. And it was, I remember very clearly a conversation having with the employer, and he says, students are coming, out, they want to start, in New York making $50,000 a year. And I was just like, well, I mean, if you consider that probably their schooling was somewhere around 50,000 a year, so they're coming out of school with a layer, not just of debt, but also cost of living, just how much things actually are. It's not really that it's not a stretch. And I think that there's that kind of disconnect that, students they want to come out and they want to just run the place and make a lot of money and all those things. But I think that what is happening is that the difference is that it's now making students really think about how they own their time. So ownership comes up because if I'm going in their
Yeah.
perspective, I'm
Wow.
going to be doing all of this, then I might as well do it with a concept where I've seen how things are managed and run, and I want to kind of go and address a problem. Everybody kind of wants to address the problem, even though they don't say it. So I think that's where ownership, this kind of mindset, is coming from. So they want to control their time. They want to control what it is that they do. Their values are much more on, if I'm not going to do this, then I'm going to go in to make money. So you have a lot of, I mean, the majors in finance have just completely, increased and gone out the roof. Now, where they choose to work, that's varied. But just the concept of money and understanding it and things such as that in finance is just, it's overhauling. So, I see that kind of as that difference as well.
Agreed. Very, very similar aspirations and that I had as a student, right? And it was just difficult to get pointed in that right direction and find some content and some characters that could help you along the way for your entrepreneurial journey. Because a lot of it comes down to, do you have the cash, do you have the equity, or do you have the relationships for the equity? And if you're part of a certain demographic, that may be a little bit a little bit of a farther reach for you. But yourself, and I imagined how you spoke so passionately about entrepreneurship and the students, with your own entrepreneurship aspirations. And one thing that is super awesome is you being co-founder of DMV Black Restaurant Week.
Mhm.
Can you talk to us about what DMV Black Restaurant Week is? And for those of y'all know, you think it's just a restaurant week, like you go and get some discount prefix. One thing that I will say, and I don't want to steal your thunder here, is that I found impressive that there was content around it uh,
Right.
for folks that were seriously considering being either a restaurateur or just if you're a foodie and you want to get a deeper understanding and more up close and personal with maybe some of these up and coming chefs or conversations that are surrounding some of the things in the culinary space and broader gastronomy topics. What led you and your co-founders to say this is a need that needed to be fulfilled, and what is that, and what does DMV Black Restaurant look like today?
Sure. Thank you for that. Well, I will start off saying that I consider myself what's called a reluctant entrepreneur. So this is my second go round in the world of actually kind of owning a business. My first go round was actually I was called upon when I was back in Charlotte to do hospitality training for event staff. At the time, it was the Charlotte Bobcats. Now, yeah, Bobcats. Now they're back to Hornets now. But there was a point in time, all right, they were Bobcats. And so I was asked to come to do training and development. And so I was brought on. The vice president of guest services at the time actually came from Miami Heat. And then before that, she came from Marriott. And so she understood the importance of training and development for the staff. And so I came in and did that. And then someone was at a minor league baseball team. It was the general manager, came to an event and said, "Oh my goodness, I love the engagement that the, ticket takers and the, ushers and everybody, has." And they said, "Oh, we have a trainer." And so it kind of hunted me down, and I ended up actually starting my first company doing training and development for staff at stadiums and arenas, right? So I had two, and well, the one of the Bobcats was something they kind of hired me for, but the one at the Bobcats, excuse me, the one at the Charlotte Knights, that was one in which I controlled. I controlled everything. I didn't even, and so inside.
Wow.
Staff, yeah. And so the reason why I said reluctant is that I didn't even, like, someone asked me, did I have a business plan? I didn't have a business plan. So when my life shifted, I decided I wanted to go and, get my PhD. Basically gave the business over to one of the persons that I was working with, and it all fell apart. So that lack of not having a structure, that lack of not asking and, asking others and being kind of like mentored almost as like I could have continued running it maybe with a small profit, as part of it, even though I went and got my doctorate. It's like so many things I could have done, but I didn't know these things because I wasn't thinking about myself in that space. So when I actually finished my doctorate, I decided that I wanted to start a company called Loop Now, LLC, which would house kind of all of the work that I did outside of my salary. So, you get called on a lot to be a subject matter expert or do curriculum development and things such as that. So owning a business at LLC for me, to focus on that and maybe get back into training and development is something that I've had since 2011, since I finished my doctorate. And so I had a business like already, but I did not have, once again, a model. Why that's important is that looping back around to DMV Black Restaurant Week, when I got to DC in 2017, I wanted to really explore more of the restaurant scene and bringing that into the curriculum. So through church, I met who would later be my business partner, Farrar Tate, and he kind of taught me a little bit about the scene. He was a former owner himself. I met Andra A.J. Johnson. She was working in the industry, but her expertise was in like the bartending, cocktails, beverage, spirit side. But what the three of us all had in common is that we knew that that there were not enough African Americans that were in the space of management, let alone ownership. Everybody want to be owners, but there's a large amount of us that really need the skills to be skilled up in workforce. And so we came together to do workforce development. And then what happened was, as we started working on it in 2018, there was an incident that happened at a Starbucks in Philly, where two African-American men, the manager called the police on them. And why that really affected me was because I lived down the street from that Starbucks when I was at Temple. And so I was very aware of it. And that was also a time, if you remember, spring of 2018, there was a lot of memes going around, Barbecue Betty, Coupon Charlie.
Yeah.
Just like treatment of African Americans in public spaces. And a lot of them were also in restaurants and hotels. And so when I looked around and I saw that there were these other Black Restaurant Weeks, I said, "Do we have one here?" And they were like, "No." And we said, "Well, let's go ahead and do one." And so we chose to do it with already coming out the gate with a different model, because we saw that the other Black Restaurant Weeks were really following the exact same model that most restaurant weeks follow. But the reality is that in no understanding the nuances, first of all, we all are in the industry, so we know a week does not help our businesses. But professional education serving as a conduit between owners and government resources and knowledge and all those things that I, didn't even think about asking, is what helps businesses sustain themselves. So we decided to focus on our mission, and our mission was to help support and sustain Black-owned businesses in the food and hospitality space by providing professional development, as well as serving as a conduit to build an ecosystem. And so that's what drives us. And so while the week is something that kind of changes in the sense of what we offer every year, the other 51 weeks of the year serving as that conduit between these business owners and resources is what we do. It, we don't get the fanfare for. But that's what we do, and that's how we maintain our credibility. So that kind of has taken us, into a space we weren't even thinking of. And that has also, I think that credibility, that understanding of the industry, that empathy of the owner, that understanding the struggles of government and businesses, I think it shows in itself. So all three of us are doing things in very, different spaces. I was asked to join the James Beard Foundation's awards committee, just, because of just kind of that understanding,
Wow.
of that. And honestly, it has led to, just understanding things like, when I'm talking to a student about why it's important to do cost accounting, and why I said cost accounting is fundamentally, you will use that every single day of your life. And if the day that you're not using it is the day that your business is going to fail, or your household isn't going to be held up, because you need it all. How much something costs is fundamentally, important. And it's also led me to be an investor myself, in a multi-unit, restaurant. I'll just say it like that. And so, the mind of an investor is very different. It's a very than even being an owner. It's a very, very different mindset. And so I've learned a lot about myself on that end. And for some people, it might not necessarily be ownership for them. It might actually also be an investment. That's a really long answer.
No, that's perfect. And like we talked about offline, it all wraps together, right? Because at the core of what you all wanted to highlight and make different about DMV Black Restaurant Week was going to be the education information, and how do we make these businesses sustainable. Like you said, that 1 week, that's great. You came out and got some discount spinach dip. You went to Ben's Chili Bowl. It was cool. We got some great pictures, but what happens the next week? And as we know, restaurants, I mean, it has an unfair, um, kind of stigma of it being a risky business because of, people going in and out of business. It's funny when I'm doing my pitch to aspiring Black, Latino, Latinx owners. That's what I always say. I'm like, it's not like it's the restaurant business. You don't see that many closed hotels, and then COVID hit. Uh,
Right.
so, but no, that was a good answer, because again, it wraps it all together. So that's incredibly important. As an educator, like I said, kind of one of the first questions, how are you staying connected to industry? I mean, you're still in industry,
Yeah.
and that makes a difference. That comes through in the classroom, that comes through in the students, access to industry professionals. Because like you said, a lot of times, this is, like you say, a big part of what you've been doing is about the relationships. So I know you all have a golf program at University of Maryland Eastern Shores. Where How do you see that program growing? Do you see that something that is going to be picking up steam across other campuses? I mean, and but when I by other campuses, I mean other HBCUs. If you had to make any just kind of broad predictions on where you see golf going.
So, I mean, golf is just it's more than even just a sport. It's a complete lifestyle. And one of the things that we're, emphasizing here, and that we're also creating kind of what's called an off-ramp program, an off-ramp degree, which means that some students who don't necessarily want to be a golf pro, not go pro, but like a golf professional, somebody that actually works at the private clubs or municipal clubs, but actually wants to work in the industry. As we also are doing, we're introducing a bachelor's in hospitality and tourism management with the concentration in golf management. Because when I worked in golf, like I said, I worked in golf, and I worked for an agency of General Motors. We've got alumni that are working at Callaway. We've got them working at City Swing in DC. So there's so many other jobs in this industry, very similar to kind of just, hospitality, where there's so many jobs and careers that you don't even see. You have no idea. And we have that. I mean, we own that. We have that space. It's just the fact of not being our students not necessarily having that exposure to it. I think where golf is going is it's one of those. It's something that is, interestingly enough, actually grew during pandemic. What I'm seeing right now, especially in the African American space, is more African Americans want to actually go professional, and is a very different than going professional in basketball or in football or even in tennis. I mean, in some aspects is the same, but the reality is that you have to become a brand immediately. You have to have sponsorship immediately. So it's kind of that understanding. But for the most part, many of our students want to work in that. And so, me being here showing them, one, that you can do so many things with your degree, both hospitality and golf. And it's also a same time in which, the PGA is of America is going through, its avenue, and then PGA Tour is going through its thing with Live Golf
Correct.
and other stuff, right? The Saudis. So, and the players going there. I will say that PGA of America is not, they're not going to really expand into a whole lot of schools. There's 15 schools where that's part of it, because it's a lot, the licensing of that, it requires a lot. We have a phenomenal director we've hired here, Dr. Clinton Sparks, who is a Class A golf pro, who came on board in December, and he is knocking it out. And when, it's funny, when I asked him what his plans are, he also incorporated technology, the use of AI in golf. I charged every student when I met them. I said, if you want to, you can be a golf pro, out in the metaverse. Why are you not, make sure you have your UMES shirt when you are in the metaverse? I just, I push them to think bigger and deeper. And so with that, and now having a phenomenal director, we see nothing but even more opportunities on that avenue.
I love it. I love it.
And golf is one of those things that, it's a business. It's still a business sport, right? I mean, it's still, I was fortunate to take it during my undergrad at FAMU, because we had to take a business sport. And it is, even in academia, I mean, just the fact that I can just hold my own in it. It doesn't intimidate me as badly. It doesn't mean I necessarily, play the best, but if I always say, if nobody actually asks you if you're good, if this is one of those sports where it's like people just ask, do you play? I'm like, of course I play.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
because if you're that good, then you'd be doing something with that. But it opened up. I mean, just I mean, I use it even in academia. I use it with working with industry, because it's still very much a viable kind of equalizer in the business world.
I love it. I love it. And agreed. I mean, it's great to see the growth there. And it was great to see how COVID really rescued golf, because I mean the numbers before, and I've looked at a few golf courses for some repurposing.
Mhm.
And it just COVID really did numbers. It did a great deal of positivity
Oh
for
yeah,
golf. I mean, it just
it's
made sense. You could be
insane.
socially distant.
Insane. I mean, Top Golf, and I mean, I think they did over $1 billion. And so, because that was the business designed naturally for social distancing, which nobody thought about it that way, but that's kind of what it is. And then, in the world of African American, the one thing I will say, I just came from the PGA show, that the number of African Americans with apparel lines. So I will say that while the golfer has kind of slowed down since the Tiger days, they do exist, but they've slowed down. The apparel side, East Side Golf, Blackballed. I mean, it's so many African Americans in the space of the apparel
Yeah.
part. So we're looking to we've got Dr. Sparks and I have some ideas about what we would like to kind of do with this data. But
I'm
it's
excited.
crazy. Yeah, it's a whole separate renaissance.
I
So
love it. I love it. Send me a polo when y'all get them.
absolutely.
What if, in closing here, what would be some again, just such a rich history of navigating through the industry. What have you learned? What would be some parting words of wisdom that you would share with another young woman who's navigating through this industry? And obviously what's happened as part of the diversity, equity, and inclusion movement has gained a little bit of steam. For about 20 minutes, we started realizing that there was gender inequalities. Um, with what would be some parting words that you would leave with women up and coming in this industry?
Yeah. I always say, well, one of my Tucker's tips is a passion plus performance equals a profession. Passion minus performance equals a hobby. So if you want to actually, if you want people
Mm,
to pay you for what for what you're passionate about, then you have to produce results. So I always say that that's just kind of that key, when people talk about passion and whether it should be your job or whether it should be whatever, that's kind of where I always like to leave, people in sort of thinking about that. I do fundamentally believe that one must be knowledgeable of everything when they go into whatever their particular sector is. So, always continuously, always, just breathe in and just absorb content and new experiences. Don't let you being the only one in the room, especially if you're a woman or you're a woman of color, use that positioning for your advantage. Especially because if you're already in the room, right? And then we talk about access, because I think access is very important. I think it's the most important. But if you actually have the ability to actually have the access and be in the room, what are you going to do now with it? And so having that bravery to be able to articulate our value, the value as African Americans, the value as women, culture, Black culture, I have to be able to articulate that. And not just quantify it, but really be able for a person to understand that when I'm even talking about especially Black-owned businesses. So I say the same thing to young women and young people. Know what the value is. You're in that room now. Now what are you going to do? And I think then I guess kind of lastly, I always just say that if you can actually see your dream, it's a little too low. I think that your dream should not necessarily be to make money off of YouTube. What you should do is think about how can you use YouTube to make money off of something you're genuine about. Because if you allow the image to drive, you're going to crash and fail, or you're not going to make money. The ones who know how to really make money, because a lot of, I'm very realistic, right? I mean, I know a lot of students that's what they want to do, that they want to be in that space of influencers and things like that. But know what you want to influence. Know, do you want to be credible? Do you want to find truth so you can dispense it? Is it, we have so many products, which is the ones that actually work better in our life based off of what we have. That's what you should kind of focus on, and then use the social media platforms to be able to carve out that value, which then of course, if you show performance, right, then that's your profession and people will pay you for it.
I love it. That's solid. Tucker tips from Dr. Erinn Tucker Oluwole. Friend, scholar, soar, inspiration, and just all around great human being, entrepreneur. I really appreciate you sharing the wisdom, the insights, and of course the free game, and just I think it's some really good nuggets and some takeaways here for industry professionals, young, those who are responsible for recruiting and retaining talent, and those who are aspiring to enter the industry. So again, appreciate your time. And thank you so much for joining us here on Next Gen and Lodging.
Thank you.
Want more of the latest news and insights from across the global hotel industry? Head to hotelnewsnow.com for up-to-the-minute breaking news, and subscribe to the new Hotel News Now podcast to hear directly from industry leaders. Available on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find podcasts.
This episode of the Next Gen and Lodging podcast on the Hotel News Now podcast network was recorded on February 13th by Omari Head. It was edited by H&N Managing Editor Robert McKeown. Subscribe to this podcast and more from H&N on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find podcasts. Thanks for listening.